Thank you, Martha. That was lovely. You're allowed to clap in the Unity Church. Go right ahead.
Thank you.
So my name is Rev Doris Hoskins. I am a Unity minister, and I am here today to celebrate the life of Patricia and Pendleton. Pat, to most of us. So Pat contacted me just before the pandemic last year. And she invited me to come to her place. And you know, when Pat summons you, you come. And so I showed up expecting to have just a wonderful chat and cup of tea like we had done so many times. And we did do that, but only after she asked me if I would be willing to do her services. Not the request a friend likes to get, and yet one that I would always honor in any way, size, shape, or form. So it was with a heavy heart that I accepted that request. And what was supposed to happen next was that Gigi and Pat and I were going to have lunch, and we were going to talk about all of the things that Pat would like to have at this event. Well, because of the pandemic, that never happened. And based on what the girls have said, it might not have happened anyway, but that was the plan at the time. So, knowing that, I'm guessing that as with many of you, there are many ways that I know Pat. She was a facilitator, and she was my facilitator at People House. She was my friend, she was my colleague, she was my peer, and I, too, own her art. You're allowed to, you do whatever you want here. This is your day. So I'm welcoming you this afternoon on behalf of Pat, because please know she is in this room, and on behalf of her family. We come together today not because Pat died, but because she lived. And in her living, she touched each and every one of us in her very own special way. In Unity, all of our services have a Christ candle, because in Unity we know that the divine light, call it God, call it Spirit, you call it what you would like to call it, but it lives inside each and every one of us. And so we have the Christ candle that always symbolizes the presence of divine with us at all services. It honors the scripture that says, "You are the light of the world." And there is no exception to that statement. So honoring that tradition, I light a candle this afternoon for Pat, symbolizing that her spirit and presence is here, is ongoing, does not ever end. So whether it's your mother's voice in your ear, whether it's your friend showing you that she loves you with a particular color, a particular flower, the butterflies that float by, please know that Pat is with you. And I light this candle in her honor, symbolizing that fact today. So honoring your own tradition, I simply invite you to pause, to breathe in, and to know that that indwelling breath of life is your connection to the divine. You are alive, you are present, you are here, and you are sacred. And so we hold that throughout this service, knowing that it is true for each of us, and it is true for Pat. It always was, and it always will be. And so it is. Amen. So, Pat Pat was born December 11th, 1935, and she left her physical form behind on March the 9th, 2021. So Pat was born the granddaughter of C.M. Dunn and Annie Howard, and she was the daughter of Catherine, called Kate, Mitchum, and Paul, called Pat, Pendleton, for whom she was named. She is survived by her beloved son, Patrick, by her beloved daughter, Julie or Gigi, by her beloved daughter, Laura, and her beloved daughter by marriage, Lisa. Her beloved grandchildren, Madeline, Sarah, Stephanie, Jack, Noah. And she was predeceased by her much-loved husband, Ted. We gather today to weave together the tapestry that was Pat's life. The many threads, the many colors, the many people, her many talents, and the many parts of humanity that she blessed, that she touched, that she healed. Over the many, we know that even though Pat lived for a long and rich life, we know that days, months, even years are not the measure of a life. The measure is taken in the growth and in the goodness that was added to each of our lives because Pat lived. The spark, the joy, the laughter, the love that she added to our lives. So we think not how long Pat lived, but rather how richly she lived. How because of her, we can choose to dedicate or to rededicate ourselves to being kinder, more loving to everyone in our family, and to the many friends that we have and that we shared with Pat. We can choose to value each moment that we have the privilege of spending with those that we love and those that we care about. We recognize there are never enough moments to say, I love you. Never enough moments to be with our family and friends and express our love for them. For those of you who haven't been to a Unity Memorial service before, you may find that it's different than most church services that you might have attended. Pat and Pat's mom were readers of Daily Word, which is a monthly meditation magazine that Unity puts out. So Unity was not foreign to Pat, and we often talked about the fact that if she weren't part of People House and what she was doing, she would have chosen to be part of Unity. We come together to celebrate the fact that life is rich, wonderful, and eternal. And we come together to honor most particularly the life of Pat. Pat gave expression to her inner spirit to the very best of her ability during the precious days, months, and years that each of us had the privilege of spending with her. As we pause a moment and reflect, it becomes apparent that our memories of Pat are those of her inner spirit, that wonderful part of her that came straight from the part of the divine and found expression uniquely and wonderfully through Pat. It is her light, her inner spirit, that has brought us here this afternoon. And at this time, her dear friend, Lynn Skinner, is going to honor us with a tribute in song.
Speaking of honor, I am honored to have been asked to sing today. And Pat and Ted verbalized for me in the early 80s what the inner voice really does. And as an artist, it's been so helpful, a musical artist, it's been so helpful to remember that, trust that. And after I was invited to sing, I didn't know where to start. I looked at material, I considered this and that, and then my inner voice said, write a song. And then the inner voice said, invite some people to send you words to help. So this song is a result of a beautiful collage, a puzzle, a mosaic of process that I went through to pay honor to Pat and to those who contributed and to everyone who has loved and known her. This is called Song for Patricia, and it does literally feature some words that people so kindly submitted. Under a buttermilk sky, we see trees painted orange and blue. Every hue infuses a feeling, and her true colors come into view. She walks with the grace of a pilgrim, leaving footprints where no one has been, exploring the soul of a landscape and an elegance deep from within. Her spirit runs free as a river, with a fierceness that ripples the sea. She divines the heart of another through her own authenticity. Her life has become a touchstone, revealing the gold that it bears, and prizing its beauty is timeless, like the light of her loving we share.
Thank you, Lynn. That was beautiful. So this afternoon, as we lovingly remember Pat, we remind ourselves of the spiritual truth about eternal life, which each of us still share with Pat. We know that in an eternal sense, no one ever dies. They simply travel to a new dimension of their incredible spiritual journey. Those of us here, though we grieve those who have left us, can still rejoice and celebrate the time we spent with them. A little bit about her well-lived life. So as a young child, she and her family moved many times and finally put down roots in Little Rock, Arkansas. Bet you might not have known that. She graduated from high school in Little Rock. She received a scholarship to Monticello College for Women in Alton, Illinois. She also attended Oklahoma University and the Ringling School of Art in Sarasota, Florida. I actually have a granddaughter who wants to go there. She loved art. She also loved being part of the light beatnik, pre-hip, or hippie culture. She became a fashion illustrator in Amarillo, Texas, and then moved to Denver and joined the advertising department of Newsteaders. Some of you who, what is it, Newsteaders? All right, thank you. I didn't live here then. Department store as a fashion illustrator. In 1958, she married Bill Myers, right? I have a T in there. I hate spell check. And they had 3 children, Patrick, Gigi, and Laura. After that marriage ended, Pat got involved in an organization called Beyond Divorce. And that is where she got to know the wonderful Ted, who was the educational director, and then the rest is history. They married December 26, 1975. Ted oft quoted, "Love is not finding the right person, it's being the right person." And Pat and Ted were the right people for each other. In 1975, Ted and Pat also participated in a month-long workshop at Esalen with John Hydra, which was the beginning of a lifelong friendship with him and the beginning of the Hydra Group, which we will hear from soon. People House actually started in Evergreen in 1974, although it eventually moved to Denver on 25th Street. It was a center for personal and spiritual growth, a house that was always full of people. Originally named so by a child, perhaps one of the children in the front row. Spiritual experience was what it was all about at People House. The integration of mind, body, and spirit. That often looks like taking responsibility for ourselves and the choices we make. So the following words, whether you take them as words from the song Turn, 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 written by Pete Seeger and made famous by the Byrds, or whether you hear them as words from Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 8, they represent accepting where we are in life and taking responsibility for whatever occurs. To everything, there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to cast away stone, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to get and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to rend and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. Pat's family has asked that some of you who have personally experienced the many facets of Pat's life have an opportunity to share your experience of her and what she has meant in your lives. I would remind you, as I have demonstrated, that tears are simply crystal drops of love and not to be embarrassed by. We come to share, to talk about, relive happy times, sad times, and maybe even the times when you were really angry with her. One never knows. That could have possibly happened. So we begin to cherish the memories, for they are to be treasured and cherished, and to re-thank God that you were able to share your life with Pat. To weep when you feel lost, to laugh when you remember good times, and to remember even Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." And at this time, we have some Pat slides for you to see.
Yesterday, a child came out to wander, caught a dragonfly inside a jar. Fearful when the sky was full of thunder, and fearful at the falling of a star. And the seasons, they go round and round, and the pains of ponies go up and down. We're captive on a carousel of time. We can't return, we can only look behind from where we came, and go round and round and round in a circle again. Then the child moved 10 times round the seasons, skated over 10 clear frozen streams. Words like, when you're older, must appease him, and promises of someday make his dreams. And the seasons, they go round and round, and the painted ponies go up and down. We're captive on the carousel of time. We can't return, we can only look behind from where we came, and go round and round and round in the circle again. 16 springs and 16 summers gone now. Cartwheels turn to car wheels through the town, and they tell him, take your time, it won't be long now, till you drag your feet too slow, the circles down. And the seasons, they go round and round, and the painted ponies go up and down. We're captive captive on a carousel of time. We can't return, we can only move behind from where we came and go round and round and round in the circle again. So the years spin by and now the boy is 20. Though his dreams have lost some grandeur coming true, there'll be new dreams, maybe better dreams and plenty before the last revolving year is through. And the seasons, they go round and round, and the painted ponies go up and down. We're captive on a carousel of time. We can't return, we can only look behind from where we came and go round and round and round in the circle again. And go round and round and round in the circle again.
Songbird, make your tune, for none may sing it just as you do. And make your song be heard. Look at the way I glide, caught on the wind's lazy tide, sweetly how it sings. Rally each heart at the sight of your silver wings. Skybird, skybird, nightbird, find your way, for none may know it just as you may. Seek out your harbor of light, let your song be heard. Rally each heart to the sight of your silver wings. Skybird.
So that is Laura's tribute to her mom. So, you heard me mention the Hydra Group, and we are going to begin with tributes from that group that Pat was a part of practically till the very day she left. And they could not be here in person. So we will see that now. Except one. There's one here. I'll tell you when we get to her.
And I met Pat Pendleton in 1986 at People House. Pat was an exceptional human being. The first time I met her, she was fresh from her art studio, wearing her paint smock covered with splotches of smeared oil-based paint. And she was a magnificent, elegant woman, and she was beautiful. Pat's husband and co-founder of People House, Ted Lothamer, had just finished interviewing me for a facilitator training program. I love him, but the truth be told, he was an all-business, humorless interviewer. She, on the other hand, was refreshing. When Pat came around the corner and popped through the doorway with a big smile on her face, I was relieved. She was, instantly I trusted her. She was just a bright light. And also Ted kind of softened when she came into the room. Over the years, I came to know both Ted and Pat as genuine, authentic, wonderful people creatures. They were both delightful. One of the things, well, Pat was a great ally of mine around People House. She, I feel like she really saw me. And if you've never been really seen by someone, I suggest that you find somebody who can do that for you, because it's like she was kind of a cosmic mirror. She honored my struggles, supported my growth as an individual. She respected me whether I was at my best or not. Knowing Pat was a remarkable and life-changing thing. And along the way, I felt like she gave me my voice. I'm sure that this was the experience of many people around People House, and the larger community as well. I know that as best she can, she was living the authentic life as best she could. And that takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength. I also know that there was a cost for her to living that life sometimes, because people often interpret strong women as being pushy or a threat of some kind, and often attack them. And there were times that I saw Pat being sort of attacked by people, particularly men, and she was graceful and strong and powerful and could hold her ground with just about anybody. I know that some of the times her strength, I mean, she could be really feisty. I mean, she could say truth to power, and she could let the chips fall where they may, and she did that. And it was delightful, refreshing. Sometimes it was painful, because I know that there was a cost for her, but she had decided to live the authentic life, and that's what she did. You know, she had started out being married to an attorney, a successful attorney living the American dream with 3 small children and all the security and material wealth that went with that. And there was a point where the differences between her and her husband just made it to where she had to choose a different lifestyle. I know that that was really hard for her children, I'm sure hard for her husband, but she went out on her own, and actually, I think, a year or 2 later, she met Ted. Ted was this spiritual teacher, sort of non-materialistic counterculture, kind of a weird dude. And at the time, he was teaching divorce classes at the Catholic Church. I love that. How much more counterculture can you get than that? Ted and Pat got to know each other, and they were really impressed with the teachings of John Hydra at Esalen Institute. And they decided to take a leap, and they went out there and became his students and studied with him. And it was a beautiful fit for Ted and Pat. The timing was perfect, and they became his student. And over the years, both of them became really, really wonderful teachers. And I myself and so many people, I saw the healing that can come from that kind of work, and especially just when you find teachers that you can trust, and you can trust, they don't have to blow through your defenses. Somehow or another, you trust the situation enough that your defenses can naturally lower. And that was the truth with John and Ted and Pat. Pat, over the years, was the force of good in many, many lives. And especially, I saw her help women who had were trying to find their authentic self. And Pat was a great role model for them. And it was a wonderful, wonderful gift she gave to many women. Well, Pat, dear friend, I love you very much. And I know you're in a good place, and I can't wait to see you again. But God bless you, and thank you for your many, many, many gifts. Thank you, Pat. Love you.
Hi there. My name is Lincoln Potter, and I'm one of the Hydra Group. I first met Pat about 10 years ago when we set up our Hydra Group for the first time. We were meeting in Dorothy's mother's home, and something happened during that first few hours after I met Pat. We developed a sense of connection and trust, which we later called love. I called her my sister, and I forget what she called me. It was something like that. My wife and I have been reading a book about how people connect. And the person in the book says, well, we lead with something. And I asked my wife what I lead with. She said, oh, maybe your hair. But I think with Pat, we met and led with our souls. And that makes it rather hard to discuss what it was that made us connect. I suggest that you read a poem by D.H. Lawrence called Deeper Than Love, because it says a lot of the right words about connectedness and truth and feeling really close to somebody. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Dorothy Thomas. Longtime friend of Pat's. She was my southern sister over 30 years. So I met her through John Hydra, and it seems fitting because both Pat and I, a lot of the foundation of our lives, the core of who we were and how we worked, really was based on John's teaching. So instead of talking about Pat a lot in this short time, I'd like to read a couple of paragraphs that John had to say about living in process. My goal is to teach people how to live in process, how to shine the light of awareness on what authentically is. And that means good days and bad days. It doesn't mean we're trying to be happy or trying to fix a problem. It's to learn how to dance with the whole dance of life, and that will involve enormously painful and sad times. And times when I just can't see through the fog, those times of confusion and questioning. My faith in humanity is that if we be patient and live in the hard times, even when life may seem empty, we embrace it, go into the void, and then something new, some rebirth will occur that's far richer than anything you or anyone else could attempt to save you from. And so I don't want to save anybody. I want to be with you, to hold a space for you as I witness your life's path. I do this in the faith that something good is going to come of it, that the organic, creative thing you're doing by embracing your life as it is far more healing, far richer than anything you or I could try to save you from. Pat role modeled this so beautifully in these last years of her life. I love you, Pat. I miss you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rick Graf, part of the John Hydra tribe. My time with Pat began at John Hydra School for Human Potential in Mendocino, California. It was 1976, and I was 26 years old, and I didn't know anyone there. That was where I met Pat and Ted. I had some challenging times emotionally at that school, and I can remember Pat being very supportive at moments when I needed it. Then we lost touch for many years, coming together again after John Hydra died, when we started the Hydra Group in Virginia. There, Pat and I, with our brief, rich history from years past and love of personal exploration, hooked up once again. It has been wonderful to be able to share memories and experiences about that powerful time in our lives at John's school. I value Pat. She was one of the most practically spiritual people I know. She has guts and heart and the courage to follow her innermost journey, even at times of adversity. Often when I open my computer, there is a notice from Pat, a beautiful picture, an opinion about the doings of the horrible Republicans, words of wisdom from thoughtful people. That was Pat, beautiful like her pictures, voicing her truths, following her path, a dear soul. I miss her deeply. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Charlie Mahler. I don't have as long a history with Pat as many of the people in the group. I first met her about 10 years ago. Pat, to me, has always been a delight to be around. I feel honored, I do feel honored to have known her, to have spent time with her. I often relate Pat and her artwork seems so similar to me that it's enlightening, honest, real. I will miss her greatly. Take care.
So that's the, quote, infamous Hydra Group. And at this time, June England is going to share.
Thank you. I'm going to read something. I knew Pat through individual therapy, then facilitator training, through our mutual friend Dixie Clark, then art and friendship. I got to know Ted as well through FT, through our mutual friends Jean and Barb Goffin, and through Pat and Ted's couples retreat in Taos. I referred a couple to that couples retreat. Great, the husband whispered to the wife at the first meeting. They don't care whether we stay together or not. No agenda. Wow, I never thought about that before facilitator training. If you were there, do you remember when we were invited to think about a relationship? Think about a relationship you've had in which the other person had no agenda for you. Is that a special relationship? Yes, it is. Seeing art with Pat was wonderful. Whether it was sculpture, paint, or architecture, in a museum, gallery, or on the street, the experience was always richer for seeing it with her. And notice she said, how seeing is different from looking. Pat knew the joy of living. She was a true creative, both in her art and in living, where so many choices are opportunities, not obligations. I see her in that newspaper photograph that was up. I see her in that newspaper photograph. where she is gesturing to us to come into True Colors Gallery, gesturing to us to let that joy live on forever. And I say thank you, Pat, and thank you for this time.
Thank you. Hannah Hayes would also like to share. You have to trust they're out there.
I see people. And the electronic people, too. I remember going up to the house at Evergreen Lake to buy Birkenstocks. It was in 1974. Unknown to me, my future husband was there for the same purpose. Don and I still smile about that first connection through Pat. I attended workshops at that house when the open school was trying to figure out how to be alternative. Pat was a mentor to me in so many ways. We enjoyed our connection through Chinese astrology, both being born in the year of the pig. We often talked about the job of helping the helpers. We had parent-teacher conferences together. Both Pat and Ted saw Don for treatments. We dined out as a foursome. We visited in Taos. Decades rolled on, we had lunch out whenever Pat was in Evergreen. When I told her I was going to officiate at my daughter's wedding, she gave me all her wedding materials. She had recently married a couple that I think spent $80,000 on their wedding, and it didn't sit well with her. I believe that was probably the last wedding she did over 20 years ago. When our daughter Ren and I attended a talk Pat gave on seeing at True Colors, I love that my daughter could meet Patton in that setting and like her so much instantly. She was an easy friend of mine to like. One fine day, we went on an adventure. I drove us to Foxton, and we had lunch at Zoka's. We sat outside and talked for hours. I miss you, Pat. You lightened me. You brightened my world. I will always remember you. Pat and I put Ted's ashes to rest in a special place in Evergreen, and I plan to go there when Pat's ashes are being spread in Florida. So if anyone would like to join me on that day, that'd be great. Thank you.
And Pat's friend, Dixie Clark. Sure.
I'm also reading something. And hopefully there'll be some new information here. Pat and I met at People House in 1986. It was the same probably week that Wayne did, because that was our first facilitator training course. We did it together. She was genuine, and Pat was genuine, and possessed a clarity of purpose that was rare. We were both artists, and with an understanding of the similarities of making art and doing facilitation. They were two things that she loved. She never took credit for the skills as a facilitator. I'm having trouble with that. But as Pat became a master at her oil painting, I noticed that this was an area where she beamed with pride. These last several years, I've noticed other things. Pat loved the birds, the ones she fed, and the clay ones that Diane made for her. She enjoyed flowers, those she tended, and the ones that blessed her kitchen table. She loved fresh bread and sweet potato pie. She loved color in all its appearances. She was a master colorist. She enjoyed her privacy. Often, she enjoyed her privacy. And after Ted and John Hydra passed, a group was formed, the one you heard about, the Hydra Group. She loved that group, and it was very important to her. She also loved the time she spent at Casey Key and retreat, often after that group. Pat was passionate about political issues that she cared about. And I know one thing for certain, she cared most about her family and her children. Her grandchildren, her children, and her daughter, and her mother. She spoke to me often about them and the gratitude she felt for the closeness she had with them, both physically, since she had left Taos, and in her heart. She loved me as a friend, and I loved her as a friend. We both understood energy is never lost, and that's why I know she's with us today. Thank you, Pat. I'll see you soon. We all will. Thank you.
So Sarah Deering, who is Pat's granddaughter by marriage.
I'm also going to read. I'm speaking on behalf of my mom more than anything. Before I even start to read what we have, I think it's just noteworthy how many beautiful labels people have given to Pat today. So a lot of these are going to be duplicates, but I think it's cool to have a woman who was titled with so many amazing labels, emblems. Pat was an artist and a creative, a revolutionary, a pioneer, a facilitator, a minister. She worked in an industry dominated by men drawing fashion design, where she showed us just how strong, independent, fierce, and determined she was. Pat was a Southern woman who was also very much a part of the women's movement and dedicated to creating a positive life experience for all women. She could also be very stubborn at times. As Laura shared during her last days, she insisted on getting herself to the bathroom in the middle of the night instead of using a bedside commode because that is just not proper. Ted and Pat dedicated themselves to helping others. She was flexible and willing to encourage Ted in his dreams, and devoted in her love to Ted and in caring for him, which is something we are all extremely grateful for. My mom shared that in the last few years, she'd asked Pat for some stories of her early life. She said that Pat would give bits and pieces, and they talked after they had both watched the docudrama Mrs. America. Pat said it was very representative of how things went. She talked a bit of how the lines were blurred somewhat in her own life, first working in fashion design and then being married to a lawyer, and then living in an upscale Montclair, Denver area, to then being divorced, finding the human potential movement, and then living in Evergreen wearing her pigtails. She underwent so many fascinating changes historically and personally. My mom said, "I think I was most inspired by her sense of herself and getting her needs met." Pat and I had met a few times just over the last few years, pre-COVID, as I became eager to learn more about Grandpa Ted and kind of as my life started following his path. Interestingly, these visits always went from just talking about Grandpa Ted and the facilitator training and groups and helping people to always talking about their love story. I intensely admired how they had set their own rules surrounding constructs like marriage and family, and how they just kind of generally lived on their own terms. When I'd ask a question like, "How'd you get away with that?" she'd laugh as if to say, "Who was I going to ask for permission on how to live my life?" Their love was the truest kind and offered them both so much assurance and limitless potential. After she left her physical body, I was grateful to be given the opportunity to go through her library, and one book in particular stuck out to me, although I gathered a lot of them. It was a daily meditation prompt for living consciously. The bookmark sat at March 5th, and I just felt a commitment to finish it. On June 25th, I think shortly after we were asked my mom was asked if she wanted to speak, and she had asked me to speak for her. The reading that came up was about death and life, and it said, "There's a symmetry and a circularity to life, a birth, living, dying cycle that many people spend their lives trying to outrun. We all live, and yet we so often don't really feel, experience, reach out our arms to embrace the world as a lover." The idea of embracing the world as a lover struck me. To embrace the world, assuredly seeking limitless potential, is to seek resonance at our highest frequency. I think so often that humans get stuck in the growing up or winding down parts of life that we miss out on what life has to offer in between. Pat did not do that, though. She lived wholeheartedly and in a manner that supported her absolute highest self, rather than being caught up in what she called the drama in our lives. Preoccupation with not being good enough, our jobs, our families, etc. Pat leaned into change, willing to make mistakes or be wrong on account of trying something creative or new.
Everything that's been sung, we feel it in our hearts, don't we? The same way, and it feels like we all belong together, and we do. In 1977, I went to a social gathering that People House was having at the Unity Church on South University.
That's this place right here.
And met the three people that changed my life: Pat, Ted, and my husband, Oscar. That's right. So, and in weddings and funerals, I get promoted to family. Okay. In the 90s, the late 90s and the early 2000s, I started making spirit pots, which is what these are down here. I made them for my family, those loved ones, and Pat and Ted. And when I went over to the apartment to pick up the things that Gigi and Laura had set aside for me, some of the sculptures that she had and a painting, and a shirt. Laura said, "That looks like something my mother would wear." And I said she did. Well, I went through these spirit pots, and remember how Ted felt about the wisdom of Snoopy? There's a little Snoopy in his spirit pot. See, the idea I had, my thoughts behind a spirit pot, was that during your life, you would put things in it that were important to you, were precious to you. And at the time of your death, if you chose to use it, you could put your ashes in it, because it already had your essence. In Pat's, I even found cards that were given by grandchildren when they were little. Made them. They are precious. And the friends and thoughts that come through in here are just all heartfelt as they are today. And as I went through each one of these spirit pots, I knew that it did not belong to me. I've brought them today to give back to the family and the grandchildren, because to sit together and go through these is truly going to be a gift of love, because you're all represented in it. Okay? So I come today and thank everybody that spoke, and in closing, I'm going to read a book. When I saw Pat last, it was at Denver Hospice, and I read to her from John Hydra and from Ted. And then I read this book, The Next Place. Okay? It's a good one. It is. Yeah. It's by Warren Hansen. The next place that I go, I will be as peaceful and familiar as a summer, sleepy day, and a sweet, untroubled mind. And yet, it won't be anything like the place I've ever been, or seen, or even dreamed of in the place that I leave behind. I'll glide beyond the rainbows, I'll drift above the sky, I'll fly into the wonder without ever wondering why. I won't remember getting there. Somehow I'll just arrive, but I'll know that I belong there and will feel much more alive than I ever felt before. I will be absolutely free of the things that I held on to and that were holding on to me. There will be no room for darkness in the place of living light, where an evening dawning morning pushes back the dying night. The very air will fill with brilliance as the brightly shining sun, and the moon and 500,000 stars are married unto one. The next place that I go won't be a really place at all. There won't be any seasons, winter, summer, spring, fall, or 100-degree days, nor a Monday, nor a Friday, nor a December or a July. But the seconds will be standing still while hours hurry by. I will not be a boy or a girl, a woman or a man. I'll simply be just simply me. No worse, no better. My skin will not be dark or light. I won't be fat or tall. The body I once lived in won't be part of me at all. I will finally be perfect. I will be without flaw. I will never make one more mistake or break any small law. I will travel empty-handed. Oh, that'd be nice. There was not a single thing I have collected in my life that I would ever want to bring except the love of those who loved me, and the warmth of those who cared, and the happiness and memory and magic that we shared. Though I will know the joy of solitude, I'll never be alone. I'll be embraced by all the friends and family I've ever known. Although I might not see their faces, and the circle of our spirits will shine brightly as the sun. I will cherish all the friendships I was fortunate to find, all the love and all the laughter in the place I live behind. As these good things go with me, they will make my spirit glow, and that love will shine forever in that place that I will go. Thank you.
I love the serendipity of spirit. The next place, which I will not read to you again. I know you really want me to, but I'm not going to do that. Gigi?
Hi, everybody. wasn't going to cry.
Crystal drops of love.
But that slideshow my sister did was too much, and it's hard to follow Diane because she's so perfect. Anyway, I just wanted to thank everybody for being here. My mother, I guarantee you, is in here and is very, very happy. Just a quick funny story. Right before, probably a week before she died, we were meeting with the social worker from hospice. And the social worker went on and on about how Mom, oh, I'm learning more from you than any patient I've ever had. And I just looked at her and I said, my mom has a fan club. And you will now be part of it. And Mom, oh, Gigi, I don't have a fan club. But my mom does have a fan club, and everybody's here and all over the place. She was very, very loved. And sometimes it was a little hard to compete as one of her kids, but she loved us, we loved her, we will miss her. And thank you all for being her friend and family. We all loved her. So, sorry, I cried for the kids. Oh, and one more thing. Lynn, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful song. Thank you so much.
So one last thing. If you're a person who closes your eyes, I invite you to do that. And allow yourself in this moment to choose your own favorite memory of Pat. Is it from when you were a little child? Is it from People House? Is it buying Birkenstocks? Because each of you have a unique, individual relationship with her. And in your mind's eye, I invite you to take that memory, seeing it clearly in every detail. Then in your mind's eye, seeing it grow smaller and smaller, and then you tuck it into your heart because you know that memory is there for you at any time. Hold it as sacred. Every time you see a candle flame, know that it represents both you and Pat. You and Mom. You and Grandma. And then you simply say, thank you. Thank you for being a part of my life. And so it is, and so we let it be. Amen. Thank you for coming.